good morning. So we are already at the end of the morning session. I must say I was very impressed by the quality of the exchanges and sometimes also as well the intensity of the debate. I think it is gratifying to see how far we've gone already. From the education policy, even to the photons beams, to talk about this distribution impact in such a short time. So my task, as I understood it, is to try to do a little and fast, of course, summary of what we learned this morning. So I will do it in a very modest way, maybe by sharing three takeaways that I've learned from the two roundtables. So the first one, we can say that we face a kind of paradox in France when it comes to distribution impact and CBA framework. And this paradox is the following. We are living in the country of Alexis de Tocqueville, where the passion for equality is very strong, in one hand. But on the other hand, when it comes to CBA framework, and it's quite surprising, we are not talking very much about distribution or distributional impact. And so I tried to understand the reason behind this. It's not easy to do, but maybe I suppose it lies in the origin of our CBA deployment condition. In France, as you know, it is mostly in the transportation sector that CBA was first applied. And maybe the priority was to measure the primary driver as being the time value to compute the collective surplus. And maybe it led to putting aside other secondary factors, and it was maybe amplified by the fact that in France, state is a major public investor. So we see that from a very centralized point of view. But the situation is now satisfactory for several reasons. I mean, the first one is when we look at the sectors of public investment concerned now, their intrinsic nature raised to the need to incorporate distributional impact. For instance, if you take the healthcare sector, where we are at the SGPI with my colleague Pascal Gauthier here in the room, looking at many investment projects, what strikes us is the need to factor in the distributional impact and to take into account the different population. Hospitals, for instance, have access to, and without doing that, we undermining the condition of deployment, and that's a very issue for us. A second reason is that even for national investment, which are not aiming at a distributional impact, we are witnessing growing demand from the public in the consultation, for instance, to take that into on board. And let me give you just one example of that. For instance, at the SGPI, we are deploying the France 2030 program, which is targeted to foster and to support innovation. So this is typically a very national program, but even in that field, we are seeing growing demand to understand on what criteria we are allocating funds. And for instance, between different regions, we are constantly challenged to understand why we have chosen this region and not another one, and on which criteria. And so even if it is not in our initial capital investment strategic mandate, the very fact that we are asked about this dimension make us obliged to take that on board and to address the issue. So for at least those two reasons, our debate this morning is very useful, and he will continue to do so in the near future. The second lesson of our discussion this morning, I think it's more good news. It is that we can move quickly to close this gap. First, because we've heard that in other fields of policy evaluation, we have already good tools, and we can leverage on that. We talk about education, we talk about energy, we talk about even science policy. And so we can avoid the blank page syndrome, I would say, which sometimes lead to launch very complex initial studies and time-consuming studies. So let's be swift and leverage, at least as in our best possible way, from progress already made by other fields of public evaluation policy. The second reason I am quite confident is the international knowledge as well. What we've exchanged this morning makes me very confident that by sharing international experience, we can also identify good practices. Of course, there is no silver bullet. We've heard this morning that even with the weights approach, there is some pitfalls as well to take into account. There is the methodological question of how far we can go to disaggregate or to identify segmented groups. But let's multiply the retakes as possible, and I think we can move quickly and move toward precise and operational sectoral guidelines, as Marc said at the beginning of our symposium. At the end of the day, the goal is to make that practical and operational for the project promoters and sponsors. My final remark would be just on a more personal note. It is to emphasize the need that for any other change in our methodology regarding CBA, we have to be careful regarding the consequence in terms of regulatory burden. In that sense, we need to continue to strike the right balance between the relevance and of the methodology, but also the competitiveness of our regulatory framework. Any improvement of our CBA guidelines moving forward will require as well to cope with the time frame of the evaluation, even for the project sponsors. And in that sense, I'm very sensible to what has been said at the EU level. I think the alignment between national and EU level will be on top of our mind, especially at the SGPI, because we are in much investment, trying to leverage private investment along with public investment. And in that sense, we need, to have this simplification objective as well in mind. But I'm confident we will strike the right balance because we have now new tools also to make efficiency gains. And I'm sure, for instance, we can take the advantage of AI to process massive data, modeling, and progress in that field without imposing too much additional burden to our project sponsor. I will not conclude this session without a special thanks to all our panelists who put a lot of energy and conviction to sharing their views and sharing their research results. So thank you for inspiring us throughout these 2 rounds table. I'd like to extend my thanks to Marc Fleurbet, our new chairman of the scientific committee, who has kindly accepted to take this role. And thank you also for the support staff of France Stratégie, all members of the scientific committee for the quality of the organization and facilitation. And of course, thank you all the participants for making this session very intense, very vibrant, and so interesting. I think you have a seminar research session this afternoon. So let's take a lunch pause, and I wish you excellent work for your future work this afternoon. Thank you very much.